if that's okay, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I think it just records the speaker view, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Fab. Okay, let's get going then. Did you hear that?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is all about making your Marrow skills really stand out in your CV, but considering with what I now work, so we're going to also talk about how you can talk about CV, how you can talk about Marrow at interview stage as well, and also what it's like to be working virtually, if that's still the case even after the pandemic, just to give you a bit of an idea. So we'll start with some introductions. I was part of UCL Marrow until 2019 and did national as well in my last year, and now I'm the opportunities officer on the Marrow Alumni Committee, and in my day-to-day I work at Fishwack Health, which is like a medical communications agency. And Eve, do you want to?
Yeah, so I was on St Andrews Marrow Committee, and I just graduated this summer, and I then almost immediately joined the alumni committee because I already missed it, and I'm one of the communications coordinator, which is just the social media and newsletter and stuff like that. So I'm currently unemployed because I just moved to Norway, and I've just started a language course because basically it's very hard to get a job here if you don't speak the language. But I will start job seeking soon, hopefully, and I'm hoping to work in the not-for-profit sector, so a charity maybe, or government organization kind of thing. Yeah. And yeah, I did a biology degree.
Yeah, I studied neuroscience, so we're all coming from a similar background, which is really useful. Okay, so we're going to start off talking about identifying the skills that you might have gained through your Marrow experiences. So
so when we were putting together the presentation, we kind of looked at the different lists that kind of top employers say that they the skills that they want. Or should I just wait for someone to join? Oh, I don't know if they disappeared again.
Oh, she's left again. It's okay, carry on.
I'll carry on for now. Yeah. So obviously for these different jobs, there's loads of different skills that they want, but surprisingly for most jobs, there's the same skills come up again and again, and lots of those are people-oriented skills, which is obviously quite good for Marrowers because normally a lot of Marrowing is done in person, chatting to other people, communicating, working with other people. So although it's kind of easy to find the lists of skills that people want, it's sometimes hard to kind of know if you have those skills, or even if you know you have them, how to prove it, because obviously on a CV or in a job interview, you can't just say I have good communication. You have to back it up, else it's kind of empty words. So yeah, that's what kind of we wanted the presentation to be about. It's so that you know how to prove that you have those skills and how to write that effectively.
Yeah. We probably don't need to do it on polling.
Yeah, we can skip that. Yeah.
But maybe we can just chat through which skills you think you've gained and give you some ideas. So I personally wrote in my CV to problem solving, organization, communication. I think those are the ones I used for Marrow.
I put a lot about leadership because a lot of people left when I became the president, so I had to try and get a whole new committee, and some of those people were the less engaged volunteers that I had to persuade them onto the committee. So then once they were on the committee, it was kind of difficult to always motivate them. So yeah, I think I spoke quite a lot about leadership and how you kind of delegate tasks to people. Do you have any examples, Nicole?
I'd say, I wouldn't say leadership for mine.
Yeah.
I'd say obviously, because as the volunteer coordinator, you do have a organize. Is probably the most is organization, organization and communication. Maybe problem solving in the sense of you know how you've got to plan a lot of events and stuff.
Yeah.
So problem solving in the sense of like how much money you're going to raise, like setting targets and stuff like that.
Yeah. But even though you said you don't think like leadership, you must have quite a big amount of volunteers that you have to organize. So like even if you don't feel like you've been leading them, if they've been going to events and like helping out, then I imagine you have been showing those skills. So
it depends what job you're looking for. If they really want leadership, I really think like you would be able to find examples to show that.
Yeah,
it just depends, isn't it? Eve, do you want to do this second?
Yeah, so this was like a little mini quiz we made up, and basically we just came up with 3 different scenarios or kind of tasks that you have to do as a Marrow or a committee member, and then we thought about different skills that may come from that. So the first one was hosting a committee meeting of 10 people, and we like asked what is the key skill that you show when you're hosting that. In the session that we ran before, a lot of people were saying C, communication, and like yeah, I would tend to agree. But then if we go on to the next example, so then we asked about running a large scale fundraising event, and when I came up with some examples of skills, we came up with creativity, financial management, organization, and motivation. I can't remember what people normally say for these. I don't know.
I don't think it's organization.
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah. And then the last example we had was approaching a stranger at a donor recruitment event, which is obviously not as applicable now, but it's something I miss at least doing.
Yeah.
So then these skills are quite similar, but yeah, perseverance, communication and approachability, and persuasion. And so this last one is maybe the best case, the best way to show this, but just for one tiny thing you've done, like approaching a stranger at a recruitment event, it's like you do it automatically once you're a Marrower. But yeah, that one action can have so many different skills that you can write about, and that's kind of that was the point of this little quiz, was just to show that when you're hosting a fundraising event, yeah, that maybe the biggest skill you're showing is organization, but if the job is asking for how you show creativity, you can also say about it for that. So it's important to kind of think, maybe like you could jot down a list when you're making your CV or improving your CV of the main things you've done as a volunteer, and from that kind of spider web out and go, oh, this has like so many skills attached, because it's easy to just go like, oh, like hosting a committee meeting, yeah, that's just leadership, but there's so many other things that you have to do to host a committee meeting that you might not think about kind of without like a bit of thought.
Yeah, it's automatic, isn't it, doing it?
Yeah.
So maybe we can just do this verbally, but this is a real job description from my first job. These are the essential skills that they said you should have. So exceptional organization skills, confident personality and can-do attitude, excellent written and oral communication skills with exceptional attention to detail. Fatima's come back. So you can think about, maybe take a few minutes to have a jot down of which Marrow examples you can fit to these parts of the job description. Either like one example that's like a big one that fits all of them, or different examples for each part of this. It's up to you, but get some thinking.
Oh, what was it?
Did she leave again?
It says joining.
It kind of looks like her internet wasn't very strong when she was joining before.
Yeah,
like,
maybe.
it took a long time for her to.
Just let us know we got some written down. We can talk through them.
Well, I used the example of our group specifically. We were really big into the Miles for Marrow thing. So we tried to do it in every month, so it wasn't just like a 1 month thing. We did it in like December and different months, and we just called it different names.
Yeah.
So it's like a different thing, but it was the same thing. And that was probably the biggest thing we'd done all year, but I'd say it applies to all of those in blue. I think the organisation came from when just sort of organising it on Strava, because you have to like invite all different people and like set all the targets and let everyone know how it works. And we had like meetings on the committee to discuss like who was gonna like do what, like tracking miles and all stuff. What did I say? Can do attitude. Well, I'd never done running before, so that was definitely a can do attitude.
There's a lot of
yeah, everyone was like, oh girl, what's gonna happen? But it was fine, and now we're all into running, so we could do it again and again.
Yeah,
attention to detail, I've said, just even just like logging the miles, you have to like add it all up and all that and do all this, because we couldn't work out how Strava wasn't producing us with what we wanted, like the right data. So I sort of had to calculate it myself.
Yeah.
But I'd say that's attention to the detail.
Yeah, definitely. And having done this job, I think something especially in like junior roles, it's really important is being able to like review things, just make sure that there's not mistakes, that there's not like spelling errors and things like that. Like it's actually a really weirdly important thing for jobs. I didn't expect it before I started my first jobs, that like junior roles would be like, that would be a massive part. So even like all your social media and like your comms with your volunteers, like I'm sure they're pretty like pucker. Just like not being shabby and kind of mistake filled. Things like that are really important to show that you've got attention to detail. Cool.
Yeah, so next we just wanted to show that like because obviously you're not a medical student, so because it's kind of easy to think like, oh, Marrow's like a medical volunteering role, and like it might not be applicable if I apply to be a journalist or like, I don't know, a teacher or something. But yeah, it's nice to kind of remind yourself that there might be some skills that are very specific, like taking a swab off someone and like telling them what to do. That's a very specific role that's not applicable. But some other specific roles might be, I don't know if you used MailChimp or like Canva or anything like that for it at Manchester, but just kind of having training in that, like knowledge of how to use it and where things go wrong with it. And because like I remember when we used MailChimp, like sometimes we had like a mass bounce backs of emails and stuff, and just knowing how to overcome that could be really important for some jobs if they do want that kind of specific skill. But then it's also to remember that whatever job you're going into, there's some skills that just fit into every job. Like you'd be very hard pushed to find a job where communication isn't important, unless you're going to be self-employed and like or something where you don't see anyone. So yeah, it's quite nice to think to kind of split your skills from Marrow into specific ones, where then if for each job you can go, is this relevant? But then also have the bank of skills that are like always going to be useful, because they're the ones that like they're the ones you have to think a bit more about and say, like, to give examples of, rather than kind of MailChimp. Like, if you've said you've used it, you've said you've used it, like,
Yeah.
you're not lying, kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
This is for me. So now we're going to talk about like the top tips for talking about Marrow on your CV. We've got the CV sections that show the Marrow bit from all of the alumni committee. So hopefully this will give you some like real world examples. To start with, it's quite important to explain what Marrow is on your CV. Sometimes we underestimate how niche this is. Certainly the word Marrow they might not know about, but they might know about Anthony Nolan, but they equally might not. So quite a good way of explaining it is you can use Marrow Volunteer, because then in interviews you might say Marrow Volunteer, but add to that with student branch of the National Blood Cancer Charity Anthony Nolan is quite a good way of explaining it. Whenever you kind of mention it, even in an interview, to remind them what you're talking about. And then our top 5 tips. Do you want to start, Eve?
Yeah, sorry, I missed that change. So the first one is demonstrating practice of key skills. So that was a bit like what I spoke about before. There's the list of skills that are very specific, and they're the ones that you'll want to talk about if you know they are relevant. So yeah, like Imi said, this is an example from someone from the committee, the alumni committee, her CV, and she was applying for a job in a laboratory. So that the skills she pulled out that were really important were GDPR training, data analysis, MailChimp, and confidentiality and things like that. So like she spoke less about kind of communication and leadership, but she went straight for the kind of solid skills that she knew that they were definitely looking for. So yeah, that's cool. And also there's the point about bragging about awards. You can see the last line. She was nominated for finalist, and it's even important to remember, like, they don't know the scale. So even if your team was like runner-up or 3rd place or something, your Marrow group, the interviewer doesn't really know like how impressive that is. So it's good to include any award you get, even if you think it's like not that good. Even if Manchester Marrow themselves did like awards each year, like no interviewer knows that that's not like really impressive or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Or include every little award you have.
And then tip 2 is to include statistics to look really impressive. So this is EUCV or past CV. This is the Marrow section. So what's important for you, Nicole, is to think about how the most impressive stats that you and your team have. So I don't know if you're kind of better historically at doing a recruitment, you really might want to really focus on that. Or if you're really good at engaging your volunteers, maybe in your case, or fundraising, find the part of your work that is the most impressive, if there's one little part, and get the stats on paper and think about how you can really write them down in the most impressive way. So if you've kind of signed up 60 people this year, is that a certain percent higher than the previous year, or is that like even particularly impressive because there was no in-person events and it was in a certain number of months and people went to university? Or how many engaged volunteers did you have? How much did they volunteer each like year? You know, there's probably statistics if you look for them and you're like on your computer that you can really dig out and find and write in a way that they're gonna like.
Okay.
So then our next tip was demonstrating long-term commitment, because often as Marrowers we've kind of gone up the ranks in the committee. So you might have been a volunteer at first and then you like you said you joined the committee this year. So it's nice to be able to show that you have stuck with the charity and improved your skills and kind of taken on different roles. So this is an example from someone who's actually like a doctor, trainee doctor now, and they don't have like a normal CV, so they can't write loads, but she's still been able to show her sustained commitment through saying all the different roles she's had and the different years she did it. And yeah, that's quite important, I think, for employees to know that you have that strong commitment that you can show. And you can do that without saying, oh, I promise I'm long-term commitment, because you can back it up with the dates.
Yeah, it's like a personality trait almost, that you're just showing them that you have.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here, this is an example, like if you're a bit further into your career potentially, or like you have to have a 1-page CV in some cases, maybe. Someone here, Victoria's a bit further into her career, so she's like 26-ish, and she can only really fit like a few lines in to talk about her whole Marrow time experiences. So she's really bigged up what she's done with words like lifelong volunteer, extensive experience, major events, national community of volunteers. So just make sure you like think about the language you're using and really like spice it up with like the most kind of extravagant language you can, and really sell yourself in this section.
Okay.
And this is tip 5 out of 5. One kind of structure you can use, which a career service person's told me to do before, is have your the sections all separated out into skills gained and then your achievements. So this is quite wordy, and it was for a CV that was like a bit longer and didn't have much experience. Like this was a lot of my experience, the Marrow stuff. So the skills gained is at the top and the achievements are at the bottom. A really important thing to think about is when you see your job description, or like the page on LinkedIn that has the job and any information you can find about it, describing it, make sure you've literally highlighted all of the keywords that they are looking for, like every single one in all of the bullets that they have. So that'll be like specific things that you should know how to do, like Microsoft Office, and also like leadership, communication, blah, blah, blah. Make sure every single one appears at least once in your CV. It's really important because sometimes they use like computer software to search through the CVs if there's a lot of applicants. So here, like it's keyword heavy. So we've got like clear communication skills. So we're highlighting that in bold and then talking about how I've shown it in Marrow. Even like customer facing skills, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, Marrow means I was a customer, I had customer facing skills, but they wanted that. So you find that you communicated with student, staff and members of the public professionally, which you did, and that's a customer facing skill. So just make sure you kind of twist everything to make sure you can show that. And then achievements, as we were talking about before, get those statistics, get any awards that you've won, and really big them up here. Or even like sustained commitment could be an achievement, and being elected onto the committee is also like an achievement. So yeah, worth thinking about. Cool. So we'll go into the next section now, talking about Marrow Interviews. So your CV's got you there. How are you going to sell your experiences? You know what I mean? So the STAR technique for interviews, have you heard about it before?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So I won't go into too much detail, but you've got the situation, the task, the action, the result. So an example of how you could use this for Marrow, you could talk about you were elected as donor recruitment coordinator, and that Bath Marrow is a student branch of the blood cancer charity Anthony Nolan, like we just talked about. Task, so in order to respond to the challenge of signing students up in a virtual setting due to the pandemic, we created March of the Men, or like Miles for Marrow, like you were talking about, maybe.
Yeah, that would work, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Action, you set up the Strava so that your volunteers could use it, keeping them engaged while they were like at home. and then result, how much did you raise, how many volunteers took part, just kind of leaving them on that really nice note when you finished your story. It's kind of like a storytelling technique, and you can really show how passionate you are about Marrow when you answer questions that are kind of skills based. So they might have asked you like, oh, how did you show like organization? And some people are going to say, oh, in my last role I organized files. But having this like out of uni experience that you're really passionate about is just a great answer. So I'd really recommend thinking about some star answers for Marrow as well as your other stuff too. Yeah, so do you want to practice, or do you feel like you've got that down?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a screenshot of that one because I needed to use it for my maths interview. So yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah,
cool.
It's really useful, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, amazing. And then section 5, we're just going to talk about what it's like to work remotely. Is this something you kind of like would look forward to, or would you hope that by the time you get a job it won't be remote, or would you like a bit of a mix? Like, what do you think about it?
I think I would always have to work remotely now, or in part anyway, just because I think that's how the world's gonna turn into. Everything's gonna be remote. So yeah.
It's weird how it's changed so quick to hear you say that, but you're probably right, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I got my first job my first full-time job, when was it? In May last year, which was starting remote, like and being interviewed remotely. And then I switched jobs in November. So now my current job, finished my old job remotely, start my next job remotely, and it's still remotely now. So it might just be useful to hear what it's like. Thing to maybe like check is, will your employees of the job that you're applying for ever go back to the office? So some won't be, and they'll have told their employees that. It might not be on their LinkedIn or like website, but it might be worth asking the recruiter when you come to talk to them, or the HR person, whether that's the truth, because you might want to have an office to go back to a couple of days a week at some point. And if they've like just got rid of the lease on their office and they're just going to transition completely, that won't happen. So it's worth knowing. Has the company been able to adapt to the pandemic financially? So I think probably most have, but it also, there's sectors that just won't have. So as you're kind of like navigating through, and the situation's evolving, you're doing your masters, there might be sectors like in-person events, or I don't know what else, that just are going to be quite difficult to do for a while, and there's not going to be as many jobs in it. Whereas, for example, like in medcoms right now, there's loads of jobs still. I don't know if what you want to do yet, or you haven't figured out yet, but it's just worth thinking about. Another thing to think about in the kind of like applying stage is to understand the virtual workplace culture. So one thing you can do is either you can potentially intern somewhere. That's how you'd really know what it was like to work there before you kind of committed. But another thing is, that's not an option, is to ask people that work there on LinkedIn what it's like. So a lot of people are quite open to have like a coffee chat with people that are looking to get into their sector. It's quite an ego boost to get that sort of message on LinkedIn and hear that someone wants to hear what they think. So you could potentially ask someone for that, and that work at the company, and you would really understand whether they're kind of leaning into making virtual working in that company really good, and offering like loads of socials and like sending free food out to them, and like yoga sessions, and all these like some companies do like walking like lunch meetings, so you're not at your desk for that meeting, blah blah blah. But some aren't. Some are like, okay, well, you'll be in the office having virtual drinks soon, so just shut up. So, or they don't have their video on in the day. My last company didn't do that. So it's just worth like maybe asking these questions, because it does really like affect your experience day to day, those sorts of things. And then just some like from things from my experience, getting to know your colleagues is not too difficult when you're working remotely. In a lot of ways, it's quite easy to be trained up on what you need to be doing, and chatting to them is quite straightforward. And there are obviously a lot of benefits of working from home. As you said, you're not too fussed if that was part of your life. So I don't think it's stuff to be too downhearted about, that being a part of your life. Eve, do you want to move on to how Anti Nolan can help after university?
So it's not as like immediately relevant because you said you're going on to do a master's. So I don't know, maybe you will stay involved with Marrow, but even once you kind of become an alumni, Anti Nolan is still there to help you, and vice versa. But the first thing we wanted to mention was, I don't know if you have LinkedIn, but it's a really useful way to save space in your CV, because obviously everything on your LinkedIn, you can have way more skills mentioned. You can have like your past experience, and I removed like my experience of working in my science lab when I was at school, but even kind of small things like that can be on there to pad it out. So you can link that to your CV. But it's also good because your fellow Marrowers can endorse your skills. I don't know if you know much about that, but so the people that you train, like your volunteers that you're organizing, they could endorse your skill and say, oh yeah, they are really good at organization or something like that. And that's, I feel like for an employee to see that someone's endorsed is quite important.
Okay.
And we've got like community groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, which you're welcome to join before you become an alumni.
I was going to say, I think I'm on one of those, the Facebook one. Yeah,
oh,
I think so.
Great, yeah. So there's one on Facebook and there's now one on LinkedIn as well. And we're really trying to make them, obviously we have like the Marrow alumni group that's public facing, but these ones we're hoping to kind of build that feeling that you're kind of part of something bigger. Especially on LinkedIn, we're having posts now that have that are encouraging alumni to post any jobs that are advertised at their own work, and saying that you can message me if you have any like questions about what my work is like and things like that. You might have seen we're doing this Work from Home Heroes campaign now, that to try and recruit people in companies, and that's like alumni led. It's led by our committee, but I think there probably will be opportunities where we'll be calling out for Marrows to help out, and it might become part of how Marrow work in the future. So we'll be sharing a lot about that on there as well.
And then the last thing is, don't forget that even if you have like graduated and then you've not like been in contact with Anti Nolan for like 5 years, if you then apply to a job and you kind of need it as a reference or something, Anthony Nolan can always provide you with proof that you volunteered. So I applied for mine recently, and they gave me like a list of the roles I'd done and the years I worked for, and it just kind of said like key skills you had to have and do. So that's quite a nice thing, and you can get that by just messaging our Facebook page or sending them an email. And we also, people that graduated this year received like goodbye letters, which are quite nice for like a portfolio or something, because it said how many donors we recruited in my final year, and also the amount of money we raised. That's also useful if you're like, like if your group's forgotten how many you recruited or something. That's quite cool. And I think they should be carrying on doing that. So they had a really good response from it. So yeah. And yeah, we just wanted to like make sure that like you knew that even once you graduate and maybe the year after next, like alumni is still around and you can still stay involved with Marrow stuff. We've really been trying to push that like people can be kind of passively involved by just like seeing like the campaigns that are happening, or like donating now and again, or they can be actively involved. Like Imi said, like we really want people to be able to maybe host recruitment events at their workplace and stuff. It's just kind of comforting knowing that you can still get involved after graduation. Yeah, like I was really glad to find that I could stay involved. So yeah, don't forget us is what we were trying to say there.
Yeah, and there's also a really like nice culture, I think, in the charity of not being like, oh, you didn't like show up for us for 2 years, if like after graduating, now you want your letter. So
Yeah.
I think like
Really excited when they see it's like graduated in 2000 or something, don't they? They're like, oh, they've contacted us.
yeah, I think that was quite nice as well, that they're sort of like always there, even in a long time to come. And we should probably take this out now because that's already happened.
Yeah.
That happened with Victoria from our alumni hosting it. Cool, we're just on time. Is there anything you want to ask? We're here to help.
Well, I'm going to Leeds for my masters, so I was thinking, do you know how to like transfer to like to do Marrow at that university? Does it depend on whether they've got like space for someone in their committee, or could I be a volunteer for them?
Yeah, I think maybe you should are you in the like donor recruitment Facebook page from Arrow? Because you could post on there and ask if like someone from Leeds could message you, because then you could like talk to them before you got there, because I'm sure they'd like be really keen for you to help out. And especially as at the minute it seems like you like societies might struggle with getting a full committee next year because they like less engagement and stuff. So if you reached out and tried to find like the president of Leeds or something.
I know that Kieran, do you know Kieran on the national committee right now? I think she's still on national. Kieran Bavra.
Oh, is she
Ellie Scanlon that's on the national committee. They both switched Marrow groups when they switched unis to do their masters, or Kieran was doing her graduate medicine and Ellie did 3 years at Birmingham and then went to Bristol and kind of really kicked off the Marrow group there. So I think maybe just like towards the end of the year, find out when their what's the word for it, like elections for next year are, and you might be able to in this space like apply to be on the committee for the next year, because you come with experience, which a lot of people won't, and you know there's so many roles on the potential massive committee. So yeah, definitely think about doing that. I mean, if not, you can be a volunteer, but I'm sure they'd want you on their committee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, feel free to like message or email or LinkedIn connect after this. Like really happy to help, like check CV or anything really. Happy to help.
Oh,
thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thanks for speaking to me.
No, don't worry at all. It's been nice.
I hope you've enjoyed the rest of the refreshers. Is it called conference today?